Welcome to the Infuse Your Future podcast, where we bring together people and ideas who are making the world a better place. I'm your host, Dr. C. In this podcast, you're going to hear solo episodes with various self-help topics. You're also going to hear guest speakers from all walks of life. If you're ready to experience the power of coaching, set up a complimentary 45-minute consultation with me at infuseyourfuture.com. And be sure to sign up for my mailing list for a free gift. Enjoy the show. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce Pam Herath, who's a culture consult and coach. And she's here today to talk about aligning values and actions. But first, I'd like to hear from Pam. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do and how you infuse the future?
Yeah, I love that topic, Carla. Thanks for having me. Today, pretty much what I do is I started predominantly in the athletic industry, but I work in nonprofits. I've had some government gigs, but whether it's a team, a business, or an organization, I help them create intentional culture through the process of getting clear about their values and then figuring out how they can align those values with actions, really in its simplest form. For 23 years, I was a high school athletic director and dean of students in Washington, D.C. And it's funny that you're in the Bay Area because an organization that changed my life also originated on the campus of Stanford University called Positive Coaching Alliance. And a guy named Jim Thompson, who was in the economics department for years and started this national movement about 22 years ago. And it changed my life. It gave me language of sports psychology and emotional intelligence before it was even a thing, and culture and systems analysis. So it was definitely an organization that changed my life. And after I left the high school in 2011, I left and I traveled to India and studied yoga, trying to figure out what was going on, and then became a life coach and came back, and I didn't have a job. And a good friend of mine who was the dean of students before me said, why don't you come who's actually got his master's at Stanford. Now it's all coming back to me now. He just said, I'm doing some workshops informally because people knew he was good. Why don't you come do some facilitation with me? And I started doing that and did that for a few years, worked for a nonprofit called Strive, How You Lead Matters, and then decided that I wanted to hone in. I missed the daily relationships of being in a school environment. It's a hard void to fill, but I knew I wanted to go out on my own. So I started my own business in 2019, and really with the intention of having sort of a few clients that I had really deep relationships with. And that's kind of where I am now. So again, I'm working with teams, individuals, organizations, and the great part, Carla, and you can appreciate this as I've looked at your website and the different areas, it doesn't matter who I work with. I told somebody this the other day, it's all the same material. And I might change the language or the examples, but it doesn't matter whether I'm working with the National Nuclear Security Administration, who I actually did a few workshops with, or St. Joe's University sports teams. I use the exact same models because culture is culture is culture. Self-awareness is self-awareness is self-awareness. And, I change a few things and take them all down the same path. And I have which I'll get to in a little bit, but I created a really simple model. I didn't even know it was a model till a friend said, Pam, this is really a model for values-based decision-making. And I said, that sounds pretty fancy. So I'll grab onto it. And so I take them all down the same path.
That's beautiful. And I love what you said about how it's all kind of the same, because I know I get asked a lot of time, what is your niche? Who do you coach? And I usually say I coach anybody that is ready to feel the magic of coaching. And that confuses people. But what they don't understand, it really doesn't matter what it is you need coaching on. It's really just about the magic of the conversation, having somebody in front of you that can see your life in a broader perspective and help you see things that you can't see because you're in the middle of the woods, so you can't see the forest.
Man, isn't that real? And I'll take that one step further. I zig and zag all the time in real time, as you'll see, and when I'm actually facilitating workshops. And what I started saying last year, because people, even when I'm doing, so Pam, what do you do? What is it that, name it? And I go, I'm starting to say that what I really try to do is increase people's level of self-awareness, including my own, because that's what it is, right? Really what I'm trying to do anytime I have a personal conversation, a professional conversation through the lens of leadership or culture or helping somebody have a better life, it starts with self-awareness. So if I can say by increasing, one of my favorite lines, which was an Eckhart Tolle from years ago, is with awareness comes choice. A huge takeaway for me. My theory on self-awareness is that self-awareness requires self-reflection. Self-reflection requires us to pause. We're not a society that so much likes to pause, right? So when I am self-aware, then I have a choice. Now, I have had a friend who pushed back and said, it's not that easy, Pam. And I get that. Anxieties, depressions, things, but I have the ability to have a choice if I have the tools and strategies. So once I'm aware, I can make a different choice. I wasn't aware of the fact that I was in the woods, as you said, right? I didn't even know I was in the woods. I just thought this was a pretty view and I was supposed to zigzag through life, right? Like, isn't everybody on this path? I wasn't even aware. So then once I'm aware, and this is a lot really direct and indirect the work that I do. Once I'm aware, some might go, Carla, I'm aware and I'm good. No need to pivot, right? I really don't need. Some say, Pam or Carla, I'm aware, but I don't know how to get out of it. I don't have the tools and strategies. And some then say, I get it. Like, help me, give me some of those tools and strategies. But it all starts with self-awareness, right? Like a catalyst, right? And if I went way back, I'm in a process of writing a book that I hope is done in May. But I believe that most people come to self-awareness. I don't know all of your story, but most people come either through tragedy, right? They've had a tragedy or trauma, or really, I think, spiritually reflective people. Two worlds that I think throw you sort of into it. We could take it to the global and just say, what a better world, right? Talk about infusing the future. If everybody could take that pause, assess where they are and where they're going. And I have conversations with people and I take them down a path. If I'm helping a team establish core values and all a core value is what matters most. And I love to say, perhaps figuring out what matters most is what matters most, right? Um,
So true. And we need more healers in the world.
mm, yeah.
And I love so much about what you said. You know, with awareness comes choice, but choices aren't always easy. Choices can
Mm-hmm.
be super hard. And that's why some people are okay with just awareness.
Yeah.
And then some people are like, yeah, I want to take choices, but we all start from different places. I mean, when you're climbing up a mountain, some people have the equipment that they can start halfway up, or some people are down in a ditch and they have to do some climbing before they even get to surface level. Self-awareness is the first step,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have to choose to make the choices, and sometimes you need a coach to help you through those choices.
Absolutely. All right, so I'm itching because it's so simple, it's silly, and I will tell you this phrase that so I was in an independent school for years in Washington D.C. and I don't know how much you know about independent schools, but there's a national association. It's called National NAIS, the National Association of Independent Schools, and I was in a really small sort of independent funky school in D.C. that changed my life, and I'm so grateful that I had the experience. But the former president of NAIS happened to be a parent of one of my advisees. And when I was thinking about going out on my own, I um, met her for lunch, and I said, Donna, I have these four questions. It wasn't quite a model then. I said, but I want to run it by you. And I said, and it's so simple, right? So here I am talking to this real high academic, and I go, and I know you guys don't like simple or silly, but let me toss it out to you. And this is the same model, Carla, and I'll tell you how I got to it. And initially, I just said, these are Pam's four questions. That was a fancy name for them, right? Because everything when I was talking to people, right, people would call me not because things were going well, right, because they have a challenge. Right? So here's my four questions. Ready? They're now known as the BFQs, the Big Four.
Hmm,
You like that?
I like it.
And I would tell you that Donna eventually said, she goes, Pam, it's so simple, but you know what it does? She goes, it keeps the thing. So the first question is what matters. Again, some organizations, some businesses, some people know what matters. And this gets to your thing. We can have awareness, right? But choice is hard, making that or getting the tools, right? So what matters? Again, some businesses have it on a website, but they're not really, really clear. Some people have a vague sense, but really getting crystal clear about what matters. The second question is, what does it look like? Very few, if any. And this is where I've had the biggest aha. So I tell this story and I'll tell it real briefly. Gosh, it was probably my early years. I was an athletic director and coach at the time, and I was walking out of our high school gym, and it was a young lady who's a junior, and she turned around and she was just dejected and bummed out. And I said, I said, what's wrong? And she just said, Pam, I'm so tired of coaches telling me that I just don't work hard. And I just said, has anyone ever told you what hard work looks like? Because being a coach, and that we always bark, work hard, focus, do better, like these really non-helpful words, right? But and then we get mad, like we get, honey, listen, you're not listening. And you go, what do you mean listening? What does it look like? We get mad at people for not doing that, which we haven't told them to do, right? So what does it look like? That is probably the biggest aha moment that I have when I work with organizations or teams. Because let's just say, for example, I'm working with a sports team. And let's say the difference in a Division 3 versus Division 1 college. D3 is more about the student athlete. So let's say that commitment is something that matters to this team. If you ask 17 players around a team what commitment looks like, you're going to get 17 different definitions of commitment. It looks different to everybody, right? And so you have to align, right? So my book is going to be called Align Mentality. You have to align with all the teams. You have to get really clear on what it looks like. So what matters? What does it look like? And here's the one you'll love. And I say, so those are the two big ones. But the reason I have a job, and probably the reason you have a job, is because of number 3. What makes it hard to do?
Mm.
Right? So what matters? What makes it hard to do? We're human. Something makes it hard for us to do that which matters every single day. I try to pride myself, even post-COVID. I try to be positive. I try to be upbeat. It's in my soul. Something makes it hard every day. I have COVID. I'm tired. I'm stuck in traffic, right? Whatever our things are. But just because it's hard doesn't mean we toss it out because it's a value. So then the last one is, what are the tools and strategies you need to address the challenges? Rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. So the thing I love, and the thing when Donna said it keeps the thing, one of my favorite examples is, let's say that you're sitting in a meeting, right? A little corporate meeting, and you're looking around, and some people are looking at their watch, some people are visibly agitated, some are rolling their eyes, and some, body language is showing. And you were to stop right then and ask everybody around the room, what matters most right now? You'd probably have somebody that goes, I just want us to get through this agenda because I want to get to lunch on time, right? Someone else
Mm-hmm.
says, we haven't even been following the agenda. It makes me crazy. What matters most to me is, can we be a little more organized? And you have someone else who says, yeah, what matters most to me is the fact that I haven't even spoken. And we talk about like voices matter, and I get a seat at the table, and you haven't even heard my voice. And so all of a sudden you get this clarity that, whoa, we're not even aligned on what matters. So we take that back to this simplicity, right? And so imagine how much of an infusing your future, these companies and people just being more at peace and more valued and more heard and more productive. They just sort of hone in. So what I realized when I came up with those 4 questions years ago is like, this model works for anything, personal or professional. And so it really became this thing that even though I might start with culture, I might start with leadership, I always start with self-awareness. Why do I do what I do? In the end, that's really, team is having a struggle. I'll come back and say, what's making this hard to do? Right? Fear is a big one of the things that makes it hard. Right? Fear is a huge, go down that rabbit hole. Fear is a huge thing that makes things hard for people, right? I have to take a risk and open up to you, Carla. That's hard. I have to worry about somebody's going to judge me or include me or exclude me. I'm afraid of that. Like, it's hard to make those choices. What if I fail?
Failure's a
Someone.
big one.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Vulnerability, putting yourself out there.
Oh yeah.
Worried about failure, worried about success.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the things that I think is being talked about more, but probably not enough, is a lot of people fear being successful.
Mm-hmm.
Comes with a lot of responsibility,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to drop excuses when you're successful.
Mm-hmm. Right. That fear of success, which is really overarching the fear of failure, right? No, but what if I actually am that good? What if I am capable of doing all that I think I am? Right. And it's this fear. Right now, one of my primary clients in the sports world, I started working with one team and I got a good reputation. And then I started working with another team, and now I work with like 5 teams. And every single team, um, at some point to different degrees, and I've done some one-on-one stuff I've done with teams, fear, confidence, fear is just they freeze in fear. It's just fear based. And for them, again, it's fear of not being successful. Maybe it's fear of being successful, fear of the messages, fear of, and it's debilitating. And my definition of leadership is emotional intelligence, is what used to be called the soft skills and social emotional intelligence. I always say the soft skills are really the hard skills, right? Because they're harder to do. But I believe what's led to this, uh, this fear and this freezing of either being successful or failing is I don't believe they go through that process. So now, right, where we had high school kids who were going into college and people are saying, like, how are these kids coming in so equipped to have conversation with adults and do this? And now I'm hearing collegiate coaches and professors saying, these kids aren't self-aware. They don't know how to reflect. They don't know how to communicate. They don't have intrapersonal. They have interpersonal stuff because they're not being taught it. Take the parent element out, but they're not being taught all that. So now it means that your job, my job, just becomes more and more important. And unfortunately, we're not getting them. I don't know if you have a predominantly adult population, right? We're getting these people who didn't need to go through what I believe, again, only people who are in trauma or tragedy. And I was one of those. It's probably trajected my path of self-awareness, probably came through that, right? So all of a sudden now we're getting, these adults or these 20 somethings who they don't know what they don't know. They're just experiencing this wood that you described, this forest. Again, half of them not even know whether it's in forest or they're thinking that the forest is the normal, you know, course of life.
Yeah, especially post-COVID. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the kids of today have so many challenges we didn't have when we were kids. Social
Mm-hmm.
media, the whole COVID experience just really leveled a lot of kids, including my own,
Oh.
especially my son. So it is very challenging. And in your experience, do you feel like schools are falling short on providing these leadership skills?
First of all, it's not what, or I'm an analogy girl. People think that because somebody played a sport and they were a great athlete, they're going to be a great coach. And I would say, they're different skill sets. Just because I was a collegiate athlete doesn't mean I'm a great coach or different skill sets, right? So we have a teacher, we have somebody, and we're going, hey, teach this thing. I mean, I think about private schools and advisory system. Advisory systems are really in many ways at independent schools designed for that interpersonal relationship. I can remember 20 years ago at my school, and again, we were leaps and bounds ahead of what people were doing. And I can remember people going, wait a minute, I'm an English teacher. I don't know how to do this stuff that we did some training, but it was like, that's not my skill set. So I think some people don't know. People don't know what leadership means. I think like SEL, like if I ask kids, have you heard of social emotional, they'll raise their hand. So they're getting it in some type of fashion, but I don't believe in I think more an awareness maybe um, of it as a concept versus assessment and building on a skill set. We need hundreds of thousands. I believe it should be, because when I go back and think about the kids that we had at our school, again, that I thought was normal at the time, and what they were able to do when they left, I mean, anecdotally and in real life. And it was the things, Carla, that you're talking about. We have kids who come into college who can't talk to their professors. And they're like, your kids come in and they're running for student government. They're having these difficult conversations with professors about like grades or curriculum or, like real, again, and that's a skill. So I definitely think we fall short. And I think some of it's that we just don't even know what it is. We don't know what it means. And I think some people see it as the fluff. They're like, no, just give them some more of this. Now, COVID is changing that, right? Because people are starting to see, but I don't know if they blame it on this generation, that they'll want to blame it on phones or something. Our kids don't have these skills because of technology. I don't believe that. I believe they don't have these skills because we as adults aren't naming it, teaching it, and helping them practice it.
Yeah, so true. And actually, we were talking before we started recording, we were talking, one of the reasons we're talking about Stanford is that I offer this Culture Catalyst, Clarity Catalyst series that is all about social emotional learning. And we do have one that's for kids that we take into schools and we teach the kids all of these tools. Um, and back to what you were saying about people not having the skills. I know back in the 50s, a lot of the businesses, they took all of that fluff out.
Mm-hmm.
And what they noticed was businesses started failing like significantly. and everybody was trying to figure it out. And that's one reason why the Stanford Business School started this Clarity Catalyst course, because they wanted to bring all of that important stuff back. And that creativity, that communication, that's all so important for your skills as a person, for business skills. And everybody's their own business, whether they work for somebody else or whether they have their own business. You're basically selling yourself. You need to be creative. You need to be able to communicate. You need to be able to ask powerful questions. I mean, those are all so important. And I know you mentioned that you also do workshops in schools. So what is a workshop in, when you go into schools and do your workshop, what are you guys doing?
Yeah, thanks for that. So right now, like I said, since and I still work for Positive Coaching Alliance on the side. Big plug
Oh,
for them. I've the gift that keeps on giving is what I say. Even through my whole teaching career, through my transition, and even in this work now, I still work with PCA on the side, and their workshops are pretty extraordinary. Let me just give you a sample. If I'm doing a culture workshop with a team, well, so this is where it all overlaps. They know the first thing that comes out of my mouth, no matter who I'm working with, is why do I do what I do? If I'm working with a student athlete in a high school, I'm a student athlete because what matters most to me is at the end of my year career, I know I'll have been successful if it's coaches, right? So whoever the thing is, I'm starting there. So the first thing, no matter what, is that I want them to know that beginning with why is the first step in self-awareness. And I'll talk about, to know thyself is the beginning of all wisdom, right? With awareness comes choice. And we'll talk about, I have a concept called window mirror. You have to spend time. And this is also where that fear thing comes from, right? When you tell somebody, especially a young female, that they need to look in the mirror and that it's not selfish to look in the mirror and say, who am I? What do I like? What do I not like? What are my strengths and what are my weaknesses and what are my styles? What am I good at? What do I love? What am I not good at? Why do I do what I do? Right. And that's really important, right? That's that intrapersonal. So this is what a workshop sort of would entail. This is sort of the opening spiel, getting them to their why, right? Talk about window mirror. I'm like, but at some point, in order to be a good human, a good co-worker, a good teammate, you have to put the mirror down and you have to look out the window. What's out there? Oh, there's other people. And they're trying to assess their strengths. They're trying to get promotions. They're trying to get more playing time. They're assessing all these things, right? So we kind of take them down the path. If I'm going down a path of, let's say I've already done culture, and now I want to really build on some skills. Classic, and this came from Gardner a year ago, and my friend who got his master's in leadership at Stanford, and we built this curriculum for a coaches institute that we ran. I'll have them begin to look at leaders, right? So somebody who I worked with, played on a team with, was in class with, that I believe is particularly effective. So now here's the next level of self-assessment, right? Now they're going to pick a person, and the way I do it now, all right, who is this person? List 3 to 5 qualities or characteristics that made them so effective. You can do this instead of dispelling the myths of leadership. This is a different way to get in, because they might think they were approachable, they were collaborative, they were the hardest worker in the room, the group, right? They gave positive energy. They'll start naming these intangible skills. And then so now they're going, okay, because modeling matters. So now you have this person, and this is the person that you're naming. It wasn't the best this, and not the most talented this. It wasn't necessarily the captain. It's the one that you said, this is what you need, really, which that's what they're saying, right? This is what helps me. This is what I need. And then I'll have them say, now, assess of those qualities and characteristics, which ones do you think you do particularly well? Because we want them to be able to recognize in themselves, well, I think I'm pretty good at being positive, but not so much about approachable. I'm not really, I kind of don't invite it in. And so then from a simple exercise like that, what's an area of strength? What's an area we don't improve upon? Right. And then we'll build on what are some of the skills. And then depending, then you might take that whole thing and put it up for a group. Here's a list of leadership skills. How many of these have you heard about in social emotional intelligence, right? How many of these can also be used in the classroom? How many can be used to be a good, friend or right? And then, so it all starts with sort of then the self-awareness, then it's giving them the skills. And the skills, as you can imagine, and so much of this stuff came from our research at PCA. Once we get past the, fear makes it hard to do some of these things. It generally has to do with like emotional fuel tanks, right? Am I somebody who fills somebody's tank versus draining, their tanks? Can I communicate? Can I not communicate? Again, levels of self-awareness. So then you just giving them the tools and strategies. And then if I'm doing culture, right? So if I take somebody through just that are coming in and it's first time I'm working with them, they're like, we might have core values established or we might not have them, right? We're somewhere in between. Through that exercise, Carla, through that exact exercise, I can help a team establish what matters most to them. Because let's say I take those 3 questions about what's my why. I did this actually for the government organization. They established their new core values from the 12 team members sharing those things because all 3 questions virtually ask the same thing, right? How are you defining success? What matters most? And why do you do what you do? And if people were to share out and extract, share, all of a sudden you're left with, oh, what matters to most of us is collaboration and feeling respected in this place and having a voice. And also you're like, well, this is what we should hang our hat on, right? And then, so much of what I do beyond that is getting people then to say, so the research shows that in order to be aligned cultures, you have to get everybody on the same page. So you have to be aligned, get everyone on the same page. You got to get the right people on the bus, the wrong people off the bus. You have to model, which is why I have them look at a model, and you have to recognize and reward that which matters. So I give them some research, and then once they establish their core values, I spend a lot of time front end having them. So it's one thing to say something matters. It's another thing to align it with an action, right?
So well put.
Okay, so
So
thank
well
you
put.
because I have this at the end of each of my little snippets now in my book,
Oh, I
italicized.
can't wait to read your book.
Oh, I can't wait to finish writing it, Carla. So it's even though it's which most people do, I guess, even though it started in the athletic industry, it's actually going to be called creating athletic work and home cultures that align with what matters most. So I try to weave in, imagine being in the workplace and doing this and doing the home stuff, but I've already have it written probably 25 times. It's one thing to say something matters. It's another thing to align it with an action, right? So one of the ways, especially, but I got to stop saying this too, because it's not just in the sports world. The traditions, the rituals, the routine, the language. Again, I worked with a renewable energy company 2 years ago. My cousin worked for, and they wanted to go through this. What are the traditions, rituals, routines? Because in order for people, and you probably do this, and I would love to hear sort of how, right? It follows a different path. You were trying to give people the repetitions, right? We learn, we whether it's this as a repetition, or making my bed as a repetition, or having my glass half full as repetition, whatever it is, we need more repetitions. So when we ritualize or routine something, we get more repetitions in it. So, for example, if I'll take you to one of the sports teams that I'm working with, they have 2 core values: relentless and selfless. I love it, and they've hung their hat on the last 2 years. So, you can say relentless and selfless matters. If all a coach is talking about after a game or after a practice is an outcome, who had the highest stats, who made the best threes, you're not aligned about you, right? But if I recognize and reward, I'm giving the hard hat award to that relentless, gritty kid. That action is aligned with what matters to me. If I'm giving it to the greatest free throw percentage or whatever happened that day, no, you're saying relentless matters, but what you're recognizing and rewarding is outcome, is a different type of, right? So it's really about, so how do we give? And one of the ways in any field, actually, it's why Google and yeah, even Southwest, right? It's one thing to say that we're fun and humorous. It's another thing to have the pilot make jokes. It's another thing to wear uniforms that make people smile versus like, why are you wearing, right? So any type of action alignment it's gonna reinforce it. It's gonna bring you closer to walking the talk, if you will.
So well put. I can see why people love you.
Oh, thank
You
you.
have a magic
Thank you.
about what you do and what you say, and you're passionate about it.
Well, thank you. I feel the same, not only about you and your energy and what you do, but I'm just grateful to be here. I do. I love what I do. And I think what I tell people I love because I don't know, talk about authenticity. I am what I am. And like I said, and John Wooden, has a quote, it's not what you teach, it's what you emphasize. Right. I love it. It's not, we teach a lot like you do when you're coaching, when you're doing, there's a lot out there. You can look at your website, there's a lot, but I can already know what your emphasis is. Right. It's about creating better humans and giving them the tools and strategies to, you're trying to infuse their best life. They can live the best life like that. That's what you're doing it by a variety of ways, but that's what your emphasis is. Right. And I can see it in your calmness and your delivery and your passion and dialogue. So when I tell people like that, I don't know, and that's probably not true, that I don't know where it comes from, but it comes from it all. I wouldn't be the facilitator I am today if it wasn't for my sports, my leadership, my yogic, my life coach, my tragedy, my trauma, and my study of meditation. Like it all spits out. Like you can hire someone else. You can, everybody's got there's lots of fabulous people that have their niche and their area of expertise. But this is kind of what I bring to the table, and I love it. I feel blessed. I think my clients like me, which is always nice.
Now, do you exclusively do workshops? Do you also work one-on-one? What is it? If
You
someone
know,
wanted to hire you, what does it look like? How do they do it?
I would love it if they wanted to hire me, they would just reach out. www.culturepartner.com is the best way to reach me. There's a place on my website for one-on-one coaching. I started like we all do when I first finished my life coaching. I was doing a pretty good deal of one-on-one, and but that was before I pivoted into my own work and jumped on this. So I don't do as much. I would love to. I find myself a little bit trying to practice my own what matters, what does it look like. I found myself here. That's what I'm honing in on. I just need to finish this book because I got something for a podcast. So all that to say, I would love to do. I've done it. And when I do it now, Carla, what generally happens, even though they have a sports psychologist, but they'll have a sports psychologist on a college campus, and I'll still get a couple referrals from the coaches saying they don't really want to go. Can they talk to you about blank? And really what I'm doing is some one-on-one coaching. I had an athletic director at a school, college 2 years ago who really was struggling with a coach and was debating on firing this coach and said, can you do some one-on-one? And took him through this exact same. As a matter of fact, I spoke with him the other day to interview him for my book to see where he's come. And I said, do you remember we went through this exact same process? So a lot of times it's more someone that says, hey, Pam, why don't you go down this path? All that to say, I would love if I could do more coaching, I'd do more coaching. Because to me, it's like, and here's the last thing I heard. You probably know this. Not you probably know this, but I've started saying it more. I would say coaching is coaching is coaching, whether you're coaching life, business, or sports, right? It's all the same. And they say, right, if you're not asking questions, you're not coaching. Something that I was slow to learn is I wasn't as great of a question asker in my early years. Like that would when I think right now about what would be the most fulfilling thing if somebody goes, travel, do some stuff. I'm like, if I could have these conversations, Carla,
Mhm.
100%. That's how I would spend my days.
Yeah, powerful conversations are important. And I'm so glad you mentioned the point about the questions. We don't normally think about it, but questions are so important. So important that one of the weeks in the 8-week course that I teach is literally all about powerful questions, why they're important, how to ask them. One of my favorite coaches right now is Rich Litvin, and he has a podcast called One Insight. And he talks about that's all you need is one insight. You could have a conversation. It could be 5 minutes, it could be an hour. And once you have that conversation, it completely changes the way you see the world. And before what was impossible is now possible. Before what was dark is light. And all of this is just about asking questions and going inside and
One
being
insight.
self-aware.
Right. And we wouldn't, and if we didn't ask the question, we wouldn't get the insight. Or we're less likely to, right? Which brings us back to, I'm sure you're doing a lot like, so active listening is generally also one of the first things that I do, right? One of the best leadership skills, i.e. leadership being social emotional intelligence. If it's a Stephen Covey, right? We don't listen with the intent to understand. We listen to the intent to reply. We're not a society. We're not a humans. Certain people in certain industries weren't really designed to think, I thought I was supposed to reply in many ways for years, right? Again, you say, Pam, how
That's
come
what was taught for
I
years.
not what was taught for years, right? Exactly. And feedback, feedback, feedback,
Back in the day, you were specifically taught don't ask questions,
right? Oh yeah.
you know, just reply.
District. Yep.
Don't think.
And there's a lot of
And
that, which brings us back to the kids. There's a lot of that. Jeremy Edwards, and one of the things that changed my life was working with him, and he ran it eventually became Strive: How You Lead Matters. But it started off as just a summer academy called Sports Challenge Leadership Academy. Oh, you'll love this. Hold on, I have to tell you this. So this is Pam's version. There's a school out here. I don't know if you know Haverford College. It's a small D3 liberal arts school in Pennsylvania, and three guys in their early 20s, now probably 25 years ago, we're having a conversation. This is Pam's version. How it goes. They're like, how come these kids can't do this stuff? They were coaching baseball, high school and collegiate baseball. And Jeremy, my friend, says, well, maybe because no one's ever taught them this stuff. And he said, well, let's create a sports leadership academy. You develop the curriculum. And they brought kids together from every different type of world, some who never left the Bronx and never been out of their town, to come with some of the prep school kids from New Hampshire.
I think part of it too is when we're in our own mind and we know how to do things,
Mm.
I think they call it the knowledge bias, right?
Mm.
When we know things, we just automatically assume that everybody else knows the same thing.
Curse of knowledge. That's what Jared, come back to Jeremy, right? Curse of knowledge. I'm assuming you're going on that path, right?
Right, right. And so
Yeah.
we don't realize we have to teach people the skills that we know or the skills that we want them to exhibit when they're with us.
No, it's all just so important. I would say sports doesn't teach character. It's a big myth, right? Coaches and leaders who care about character and leadership and social emotional intelligence will seize those opportunities. I do believe that there isn't anything in life that provides the amount of options, the amount of opportunities daily that sports does. But we gotta seize them. We gotta seize them, and we gotta seize them, and we gotta teach them.
True, true. Yeah, I think sports has infinite potential and infinite opportunity. But to your point earlier, just because you're coaching a sport, just because you have a team of people, it doesn't necessarily mean you have the leaderships to teach them the character. So you have to deliberately do that because I don't know about in your area, but certainly in the Bay Area, my kids are in soccer and parents can get and even coaches, frankly, can get super caught up in the outcome. And they're not teaching the character and they're not teaching the team building. I actually had to take my son off of a soccer team because there was no interpersonal dynamics. There was no team building. And it was just devastating for him. It was doing the opposite. He was going to these soccer practices and soccer games and he was coming away feeling empty, feeling
Doing the opposite. Do you know, as a coach, as an athletic leader, like as a human, how that pains me? Especially because people think
yeah.
that. They're thinking, oh, he's soccer, he should be exposed to all this. No, not only did he not get the valuable, he got the opposite. But just like I say, every culture, if you're not intentional about creating, it's going to default to something else. Right. So I talk about intentional cultures versus default cultures. The same thing that youth sports has created. We are in such a default culture, not only like the experience of the kid, but how has it impacted families?
Well, I like to end each episode with a call to action. Do you have a call to action for people out there, something they can do to make a difference in their life right now as soon as they as soon as
Uh,
they finish this podcast?
Yeah. Think back of those four questions. What matters? What does it look like? What makes it hard to do? What are the tools? Come up with one thing. And if you desire to do one personal, one professional, and get crystal clear on just one area, take a small bite of the apple and go down the path of what makes it, first of all, what does it look like? And once you answer that, say, what does that look like? And once you answer that, say, what does that look like? And go down the onion of keep saying until all of a sudden you run out. And okay, I know exactly what it looks like. If somebody were to look at me, they say you're exhibiting this behavior and quality and characteristic of that value. And then say, what's making it be, have that honest conversation. Maybe ask someone else, what's making it hard? And don't beat yourself up. It just is. Like I said, something makes it hard. I have things that make something hard every single day. I have several of them. And be light about it. Right. And then either if something, and more than likely, most people, Carla, I believe, then have the answers. They can come up with a tool and strategy themselves once they hone in on that. But if not, reach out to a Carla, reach out to a Pam, reach out to someone who says, hey, give me a few more strategies. But I think if we just did that and bit that little piece of the apple, you're on the path.
Great advice.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Carla.